Raidou Remastered, the Mr. Soulless Army, is the remaster, but also kind of remake-ish in places, I'll explain more later, of the PS2 entry Raidou Kuzunoha versus the Soulless Army, with this version being done to try and not only give Raidou a chance being back in the spotlight, but also possibly reignite the Raidou franchise, and hopefully get a third entry if this does well, but also probably getting remastered treatment for the second entry, while, like I said, fixing the problems of the original Raidou 1, and I hope it gets does the successful, it gets more stuff. So the main premise is that you are the newly dubbed Raidou Kuzunoha, full title, Raidou Kuzunoha the 14th. Yes, title and not name, your name is something else that you put in, where you are a double summoner that works with the Narumi Detective Agency in order to solve paranormal cases. With this caper starting out with a high school girl calling, asking you to meet her, only to request that she be killed, but as she gets kidnapped by mysterious red soldiers, and from there on the journey begins in trying to find out why with the girl, why she called you to essentially ask to be killed, and what has been happening to Tokyo in the Taisho 20 era. One interesting change they did for this version of the game is that there's an early on point where they just randomly show you out of context snippets from later in the game, which for I've seen people feel like it's done to try and hold your attention because the early parts of the game aren't the most riveting. It's not bad, far from it, but it's the fact that it's not the kind of game where the mystery builds up fast. It's trying to be a slow burn at first, so they try to show you these snippets to be like, hey, be interested, but it's so randomly placed and the game only does it once and then never again, which makes it feel weird. There's also the fact that this game adds in more context the original version had. Originally, there was context and narrative that was only really told outside the game in a post-game material, but now this game has characters included information so you can fully understand the narrative of this game, albeit it is very awkwardly shoehorned in where they place the information, but it's better to have it than to not have it, seeing as once again it helps you understand what exactly is going on in the narrative, while there's a PS2 release kind of had information but wasn't enough information to fully understand and grasp the full weight of the scenario. Overall, I do enjoy the narrative. I did enjoy the narrative of the original Raidou 1. I mean, like I said, the new information is awkwardly placed, but it makes it understandable, so it's fine, it's awkwardly placed, it's whatever, but said narrative is enjoyable, but it is, like I said, a slow burn, with the game taking time to really try and build the mystery, so you will have moments where it feels like not much is being done. Now, how this game works on an episode system, basically chapter-based, and there's some episodes that just go by in like 20 minutes and immediately to the next episode, to a point where it feels like some episode count could have been reduced, and instead those segments could have been attached to a pre-existing episode, rather than just being a random 20-minute segment, but it's whatever the game's telling the narrative. Now for the gameplay. With the main gameplay of Raidou 1, always having been an action RPG, but in the original, the action combat was incredibly stiff and not good. In fact, I found out I hated how the game played originally. The remaster completely changes combat entirely. That's why I said it's more of a remake-ish, because of the fact that combat is entirely changed, with it being way more smoother, way more faster paced. It not only takes mechanics from Raidou 2, like being able to summon 2 demons at once, or having this one big green magnetite bar that your demons use in order to cast spells or abilities. It also brings in a bunch of new ideas into the fold, as a Demon of Bane ability, where if you either do a perfect dodge, or if you manage to knock an enemy off balance, you have an opportunity to do a Demon Bane, which does big damage, although get prepared to see the same 3 animations over and over when it comes to that. Or the fact that we'll have also a Spirit Gauge, where we'll do a giant AoE attack that also changes with the elements, so that means if an enemy is stuck with a certain element, you can deal even more damage with it, which is a super cool addition, especially since it does take a while to build up, so that's something you can easily spam. Overall, I found combat to be generally balanced. Other changes include the fact that in the original, you had to have essentially certain amount of bullets you can carry, like 9 bullets you can carry. Here, the bullets infinite, and the OG also had elemental bullets that you really mostly use for these elemental barriers I'll explain later. Here, instead, you have the magnetite that can regain by attacking enemies with the light attacks, but you have a heavy attack that does more damage, but it does not pull out the magnetite for enemies, so to balance both is how the game plays. You can also recall your demons towards you, creating Bottle from Raidou 2, which is super cool because of the fact that it means you can get them out of danger immediately, and there are some attacks that are completely undodgeable and unblockable, so you don't want your demons out of the way there. Although, there are times where the demons can be stupid, like I said, that's only one instance I can think of where there would be like fire on the ground that obviously you shouldn't touch, but my demons would be stupid enough to stand in it and have their health drain fast. But overall, combat is majorly improved in this game to an insane degree, and it is freaking awesome what they did with it. And I know some people were upset the combat changed, which, granted, the original still exists in emulation, which I played the original via the PS3 version, but also the fact of, even the devs admitted the original game's combat was its biggest weakness. Another change is also to the exploration segments, and this is where some of the things they add in start to feel too much. Like the fact of, oh, you have these healing NPCs that will heal you, and they just heal you for free with no cost whatsoever. And sometimes the area is so small, it doesn't really need to have with NPCs here, or sometimes I have multiple, but it's like weird to have them there when it's like a bit overkill. And there's some large areas with only be one in the entire area. It's a backtrack to go towards it, so that feels weird. The original Raidou 1 also used random encounters. Here you can see every enemy before you get to a fight, but the ambush ability you have launches your demons from a distance, meaning there should be no point which an enemy ever jumps you, because it takes them a while to even notice Raidou, but you can just immediately get the advantage from a distance using your demon. So that just completely trivializes the entire idea of, oh, well, the enemy gets the advantage. They never will. They never will, because you just throw a demon out from a distance, go, and then done, and get to a counter. So that would change it a little bit much, but the biggest one has to be the overhand holding of the investigation. Because in the game, you use demon abilities for investigation, because each demon's affinity gives them a certain ability that can help the investigation, like, oh, maybe they can move stuff, maybe they can read minds, maybe they can ignite a person, get them all fired up to get you more info. But here, the game immediately tells you what each person needs, and with a push of a button, Raidou will automatically summon the demon that is needed. Like, it is a handy feature, but it's also doing all of the work for you to the investigation, and since that's being done for you, there's nothing really for the investigation segments to really have for you to do. Which is even weirdly contrasted, because there is a point in which Gouto, who's a companion of Raidou, gets chewed out for constantly hinting at puzzle solutions for Raidou, and they told, nah, let the Devil Summoner do it himself. But this is a game that also overly handholds your investigations, so it feels weirdly out of place for a character to be scolded for overly handholding the player, when the game itself is overly handholding the player. And that's if that suddenly stops. No, it still stays. So this joke feels very weirdly placed to keep within the remaster, considering its whole entire fact of the game itself is now the overly hand-holding freaking mentor. Nether gates will appear in the game in order to prevent progress. These gates can only be destroyed by being attacked by a certain affinity, and the game will tell you immediately which affinity. In the original, I found them effing horrible, since the demons had their own MP meter, and also the fact that the bullet ones could only be destroyed by Raidou, but instead of limited bullets, it means you can potentially just run out and have to back out and buy more bullets. But here in the remaster, infinite bullets makes the bullet nether gates not an issue, and since you get more magnetite for your demons by attacking enemies, each nether gate will have enemies spawn with them, so you can always get magnetite for your demons to use a spell. And Raidou himself now has little signs you can use in order to do elemental damage, making the nether gates in the remaster a complete non-issue, to the point where you question why they're still here. but now they're at least they're not just completely stressful entirely. So there is that change to another gate system that, once again, while I appreciate, it's the one of those things that makes you question why another gates are here, considering how easily destroyable they are now. Another big change is the addition of fast travel, which is convenient because this game requires you to backtrack a lot of places. You can even immediately backtrack to the Dark Realm, which is the bigger areas where you have demon encounters, which is very convenient. I'm to go through always have to go through animation or going to a Dark Realm and everything. But having all this fast travel just really highlights how much of the game expects you to constantly backtrack to an annoying degree to places. It's one of those things where, do I praise the fact that the fast travel is here to alleviate that, or do I criticize the game for having so much annoying backtracking to begin with where it becomes obnoxious? So it's one of those things where it's like, do I praise the remaster for that, or do I praise the game, do I bash the game itself because this should even be here? Another new addition is case files. Case files were introduced in Raidou 2, and they add them here, although they can feel how shoehorned in they are, because you'll just get automatic notification, they add new case files, and you'll immediately see blips on the map for the case files themselves, what to do with them, and the case files will generally tell you, once again, exactly what needs to be done. Even some that feel like they should be a puzzle will instead just spot the answer most of the time. So it is, once again, very hand-holding when it comes to the investigation aspect, but they are a nice addition, so you do get neat stuff for doing it, and they do also basically tell you to go back to certain places to get more information on past characters that you interacted with and see what they're doing after you've helped them out, which is a very nice thing to be like, hey, go back here, talk to this person, see how they're holding up, what's going on. That's a nice use of the case file mechanic, but overall, it's just kind of exists. I mean, it does include, hey, new boss fights you can face to go after, which is, you know, fun to do, but the case files aren't anything major, and once it aren't as interesting as Raidou 2's implementation of the case files. More to game mechanics is also Demon Fusion, they do add some nice features from later entries like reverse fusion to help you know exactly what you want everything, or it gives the demon charts, but fusion was pretty simple and straightforward, and even getting demon skills felt basically mindless because of the fact that demons just automatically replace the old skill with a better one. So there's never a point where I felt like I had to question what to equip my demon with. They just basically already know what to do and what to have, so I never really had a surplus of skills, so it felt pretty hands-on because of fusion, except for any passive skills, which is where you want to fuse demons a lot, because when demons fully loyal, they gain a passive skill. If you keep fusing them, that adds more passive skill for the new demon they fuse to equip, so important it could be, you could just have an absurd amount of passive skills to pass on to the next demon, which is a pretty cool system. You also have sword alchemy in order to improve Raidou's weapon, and in this version of the game, you now have 3 different branches to pursue based on what sword attack you want, based on whether it's attack based on a sword, based on a lance, or based on an axe, which each have different affinities, but they also unlock new skills for Raidou to use, whether it be active skills using combat, like the pyro sign or melee attacks, or passive skills that benefit Raidou, so you do want to go through all the trees if you can, especially as the game with the case files will reward you with more swords, so you can just make the other swords with those rather than to use the same sword and potentially downgrade it or to get a new ability. So that is a cool addition where they change how sword alchemy works in order to make it so Raidou's more expansive moveset on top of that, which is a pretty cool thing to add for the remaster. Although when it comes to sword alchemy, I wish you could swap out swords within the sword alchemy menu rather than having to back out of the Goumaden and everything in order to then swap out your swords or see what sword you need and everything in order to swap out. I wish it was more convenient with sword alchemy, saying I came up a lot of time, I have to back out, go, wait, I had the right sword equipped, didn't change the sword, didn't change this, no, they did this sword equipped to this and then that, and I like wish I could do that within the menu of the Goumaden Goumaden itself, and probably need to back out to the big main menu for Raidou and everything. Another thing is occasionally demons will ask you to talk to them, which not necessarily talk to them, but the fact of they give you bonus items on occasion, and sometimes it can be pretty frequent to constantly check up and go through all of them at once. And I wish at a certain point you just skip all the dialogue, everything, just get straight to the item, because these demons keep constantly wanting your attention in order to give you stuff. Sure, it's free stuff to get, but like, god damn, people, chill, calm down, relax, I'm one boy. Now for the text. Most of the text in this game actually has a transparent black border appear behind it, make it easier to read even during the cutscenes. The only time it doesn't is when it's a pre-rendered cutscene. But a lot of the text also has an outline on it, making it easier to distinguish the text from the background. The only thing I wish is some of the text could be bigger. The ones for tutorials, I understand, can't be bigger since there's a lot of words in them, so there's not enough space to make them bigger. But the ones for greater cutscenes could be made bigger since there's not very much else on screen. Like I said, I do appreciate the fact that they have the black outline on them. I do appreciate the fact that most of the text has a black background whenever they appear. That is very cool. Also, there are times when on the menu, text is shown on the bottom, it's like very tiny, or after you complete a case file, the items you get are told to you on the left side of the screen, but they're very tiny, so that could also have been better. But overall, I'd say it's pretty good. Like I said, wish for the pre-rendered cutscenes, the subtitles were bigger, but this game also pretty much has a lot of voice acting. Not full voice acting like in every NPC, but the main story is fully voice acted, so there is that as well. Overall, I consider Raidou Remaster Mystery Soulless Army to be a much better version of Raidou 1. It does have its own little weird quirks, the fact of exploration segments, especially in towns. Like the original game used fixed camera angles, well this game still has them, but sometimes will give you some degree of control, and it can feel awkward when it switches between the two and the camera angle shift is like, it would have been more natural. It was just purely either full control or full fixed camera, as opposed to constantly shifting between the two. You also have camera in combat where you do have a lock on, but it's also the fact that you want to attack other enemies, try to swap to them is a bit awkward because sometimes the lock-on button will go to this enemy, sometimes it'll go to a different enemy, and sometimes it's a bit weird. And the camera in combat, once again, it tries to keep up with the enemy, but sometimes it can pretty much turn to the wrong way, and everything has to turn the camera around and having full control with the camera control is a bit finicky in the combat, but try and name a game that doesn't have weird camera control issues. You can't. So, once again, understandable. So, like I said, overall, this is the go-to version of Raidou 1. It contains all the story context you would want for Raidou 1. It includes new Easter eggs and stuff to other Mega 10 games as well. So, if you play those games, which some being Japan only, so you're probably, well, your odds aren't the highest. But if you have, nice. So there's stuff like that to include case files, but a pretty basic inclusion, do add more stuff to do, and gives you, as an excuse to pretty much follow up on certain characters, everything. So, like I said, overall, I like this game a lot more than the original character. I hate the original Raidou 1 because of how it played. While this one, it doesn't fix all the gripes I have for the original. It effectively fixes the biggest issues I had, which is why I prefer this one over the original. So I gotta say, Raidou Remaster Mystery Soulless Army, freaking good remaster. If they do this for 2 and potentially make a new entry, that would be awesome. It's great to have Raidou come back, and I would love it if more Mega 10 titles could coexist with Man SMT and currently Persona as well, just to have more Mega 10 games come back. Can we get Double Survivor sometime though, please? Please? Double Survivor? I love Double Survivor. So either way, glad I came back. Big surprise that, like I said, someone who ate the original ended up being excited for this version and greatly enjoyed it. So I gotta say, Raidou Remaster Mystery Soulless Army is freaking great.